Ladies and gentlemen, today I invite you to open your hearts and minds to a divine moment. In a world full of noise and uncertainty, there is a prayer that can guide your steps, calm your spirit, and let God lead your way. When we speak to God with faith, clarity, and intention, our paths begin to align with His perfect plan. Prayer is not just words, it is the bridge between your heart and God's guidance. It is not merely the repetition of phrases, the echo of our desires, or the recitation of lines memorized in habit. Prayer is the living, breathing dialogue that begins deep within us, a sacred conversation that transcends time, space, and human understanding. When you pray, you are not asking God to act on your timetable, nor are you trying to bend the universe to your will. Instead, you are opening the door of your own soul, allowing the light of divine wisdom to enter, to illuminate, and to transform. Prayer is the gentle murmur of the Spirit that reminds us we are not alone, that even when the world seems heavy, even when the nights are long and the burdens feel unbearable, there is a guiding hand reaching toward us. It is the recognition that the mind is finite, but the heart, when aligned with God, becomes infinite in vision and capacity. When you pray, it is not a matter of speaking alone, it is a matter of listening. The moments of silence in prayer are often louder than the spoken words, for in those silent spaces, the soul communicates in whispers that only the heart can hear. It is in these quiet breaths that God speaks, often subtly, often in ways that do not demand immediate recognition, but in ways that shape the path you are destined to walk. Prayer is the bridge because it connects what you cannot see with what you long to understand. It is the path that joins your fears with hope, your confusion with clarity, your longing with fulfillment. When you speak your heart to God, you are not only casting your burdens upward, you are also opening yourself to receive the wisdom that transforms those burdens into lessons, those struggles into triumphs, and those tears into streams of resilience. The act of praying requires courage. It requires the courage to be vulnerable, to strip away the layers of pride, pretense, and control, and to stand bare before the Almighty. It is easy to pray when life is smooth, when the days are bright and opportunities come like a gentle breeze. It is harder to pray when the storms rage, when the world seems against you, when despair creeps in and the shadows of doubt stretch long across your path. Yet it is precisely in those moments of struggle that prayer becomes the bridge, the fragile yet unbreakable connection between your deepest need and God's unwavering presence. The heart, when poured out in sincere prayer, becomes a vessel not just of petition, but of transformation, of alignment with a wisdom far beyond human understanding. Each prayer, no matter how short or long, spoken or unspoken, is a step onto that bridge, a step toward trust, toward surrender, and toward the realization that God is not just listening, but is actively guiding your way. Prayer teaches patience. It teaches that life unfolds not on demand but in divine timing. The world pushes us toward immediacy, toward quick fixes and instant gratification. But prayer reminds us that there is a rhythm to divine guidance. The bridge between your heart and God's direction is not built in a day, nor can it be crossed in a single breath. It is strengthened with consistency, with faith, and with the quiet repetition of returning to that sacred conversation, day after day, moment after moment. Each prayer is a stone laid carefully, forming a pathway that holds steady even in the fiercest storms. And as you walk along this bridge, you begin to notice subtle signs, gentle nudges, moments of clarity that could never have come from your own mind alone. Prayer attunes your spirit, to recognize the movement of God in your life, to hear his guidance in the whispers of circumstance, in the alignment of opportunities, and in the people who cross your path at just the right time. It is important to understand that prayer is not a transaction. It is not an exchange in which you give words and receive outcomes according to a contract you have imagined. True prayer is relational. It is intimate. It is a recognition of your place within a greater tapestry of creation, a humbling acknowledgement that your life is interwoven with forces seen and unseen, and that by opening your heart, you allow the divine to shape your direction in ways your mind cannot conceive. The words you utter are not the power themselves. The power is in the connection, in the surrender, in the willingness to be guided rather than to force your way forward. When your prayer comes from a heart that is sincere, a heart that is willing to listen and not just speak, that is willing to trust rather than demand, that is willing to receive rather than only ask, you are building a bridge that carries you over confusion, doubt, and fear. Sometimes the guidance that comes through prayer is not obvious. It does not always arrive as a clear instruction or a sign that fits neatly into your understanding. It may arrive as a quiet assurance, a shift in perspective, a sense of peace in the midst of chaos. Prayer opens your heart to perceive these subtle currents, to feel the gentle tug of divine direction, and to act upon it with faith rather than with impatience. The bridge between your heart and God's guidance is sturdy, yet it requires walking, requires trust, requires continual engagement. You cannot cross it once and then step back into the world expecting miracles to fall effortlessly into your lap. You must step onto it each day, each time your spirit longs for direction, each time your decisions weigh heavy upon your heart. Prayer is also transformative. It does not simply change circumstances, it changes you. As you pray, you are reshaped, your heart softened, your perspective widened. You begin to notice the world not as a place of obstacles, but as a place of lessons. You begin to perceive challenges not as punishments, but as invitations to grow. Through prayer, your heart learns discernment. Your mind learns patience, and your spirit learns resilience. The bridge between you and God is active. It moves you, molds you, and carries you forward. The guidance you receive is not always a map, but a compass, pointing you toward alignment with purpose, toward clarity, and toward the wisdom that leads to fulfillment beyond what you imagined. It is essential to remember that prayer is a practice of honesty. You cannot stand upon this bridge with pretense, with half-truths, or with superficial utterances. God desires the fullness of your heart, the rawness of your emotions, the depth of your need. When you bring your joys, your fears, your confusions, and your hopes into prayer, you are not burdening God, you are participating in a sacred exchange, one in which your sincerity meets divine understanding. Each word spoken, each thought expressed, each silence held in reverence strengthens the bridge. And as the bridge strengthens, your connection with God's guidance becomes clearer, more dependable, and more deeply rooted in trust. Prayer is also a demonstration of faith. It is an act that declares, I believe there is a higher power who cares for me, who sees beyond my limitations, who holds my life with intention and love. In this declaration, your heart aligns with God's wisdom. Prayer becomes the conduit for inspiration, courage, and insight. It is through this sacred practice that you learn to distinguish between the voice of fear and the voice of guidance, between the noise of the world and the whisper of God. Each time you pray, You strengthen not only your connection with God, but also your ability to recognize His presence in every facet of your life. The bridge that prayer builds is not always straight or easy. It can feel long, steep, and daunting, especially when life is heavy and the answers seem delayed. But it is a bridge that endures, a bridge that connects the finite human experience to the infinite wisdom of God. It is a bridge of trust, a bridge of hope, a bridge of surrender. When you step upon it with humility, with faith, and with an open heart, you find that the burdens that once weighed you down are lightened, that decisions that once paralyzed you are clarified, and that your life begins to move in harmony with a purpose greater than yourself. Prayer, therefore, is not just an act. It is a lifestyle, a constant posture of the heart. It is the rhythm of surrender and receptivity, the ongoing dance between human yearning and divine guidance. And in this dance, in this sacred communication, your heart is transformed, your spirit aligned, and your steps guided with precision that only God can provide. Surrendering your plans to God opens doors you never imagined possible. It is a lesson that begins not in the world of certainty, but in the quiet chambers of the heart, where human will meets divine wisdom. Too often we cling to our own designs, our own schedules, our own expectations, as though we are the sole architects of our lives. We plan, we strategize, we map out every detail, believing that our vision alone can carry us to fulfillment. And yet, the truth is that the greatest paths, the most profound journeys, and the doors that lead to transformation are not discovered through the insistence of the human mind, but through the willingness to yield, to step aside, and to allow God's hand to guide the way. Surrender is not weakness, it is strength. It is a conscious act of courage that says, I release my control and place my trust in the one who knows all, sees all, and holds all things in perfect balance. When we surrender our plans, we acknowledge that while our understanding is limited, God's understanding is infinite. And it is in that infinite wisdom that we find opportunity, clarity, and direction beyond what we could have ever imagined. Surrender begins with humility. To surrender is to admit that we do not have all the answers, that our vision may be narrow, that our plans, while carefully constructed, are not the sum total of possibility. It requires the courage to release attachment to outcomes, to loosen the grip on the familiar, and to open the hand that clings to what we think is necessary. In doing so, we make space for divine intervention, for doors that we could not have foreseen, for opportunities that arrive when timing, alignment, and purpose converge in ways that only God can orchestrate. Often, these doors do not resemble the plans we held so tightly. They are not framed in the language of human expectation. They may appear as detours, as unexpected encounters, as challenges that seem inconvenient or even insurmountable at first. And yet, as we step through them with faith, we discover that each door opens to a path of growth, blessing, and fulfillment that exceeds the limits of our imagination. The act of surrender is both simple and profound. It is simple in that it requires only a single decision: to release, to let go, to trust. Yet it is profound because it transforms the entire landscape of our lives. When we surrender, we shift from a mindset of control to a mindset of receptivity. We stop trying to force outcomes, to manipulate circumstances, or to orchestrate the world according to our will. Instead, we attune ourselves to the subtle, often quiet movements of God's guidance. We learn to recognize the gentle nudges, the synchronicities, the doors that appear at precisely the right moment, and the people who cross our paths as instruments of divine alignment. Surrender is not passive, it is active. It is the vigilant observation of life through the lens of faith, the readiness to step where we are led, and the courage to embrace the unknown with the confidence that God is already there, preparing the way. One of the most remarkable truths about surrendering your plans to God is that it often reveals possibilities you could never have conceived on your own. We are limited beings, bound by perception, experience, and fear. We make plans based on what we know, on what seems safe, and on what appears achievable. But God's vision is limitless. It encompasses not just the present, but the entirety of possibility, the weave of cause and effect, the unseen connections that stretch beyond the horizon of human understanding. When we yield our plans, we step into a reality that is larger than ourselves, a reality where doors open in response to trust, where paths align in miraculous synchrony, and where the unfolding of our lives reveals a pattern of purpose that we could never have drafted alone. It is in these moments of surrender that we witness the extraordinary, the impossible becoming possible, the ordinary transformed into the extraordinary. Surrender also teaches patience. We live in a culture that prizes immediacy, that rewards haste, and that glorifies control. Yet, the doors that God opens in response to surrendered plans are not always immediate, nor are they always obvious. They may require waiting, enduring, and trusting through seasons of uncertainty. And in that waiting, there is growth. The time between surrender and manifestation is a sacred period in which character is refined, wisdom is deepened, and the heart is aligned with purpose. Every moment of patience, every silent prayer, every act of faith in the waiting period strengthens the bridge between what we desire and what God intends. Surrender is not abandonment, it is engagement. It is an active, living partnership between human intention and divine orchestration, in which we play our part with diligence, integrity, and faith, while leaving the ultimate outcome in God's hands. Another aspect of surrender is the freedom it brings. When we cling tightly to our own plans, we live under a weight of expectation, pressure, and anxiety. We are burdened by the need to control every detail, to predict every outcome, and to ensure that life conforms to our design. But when we surrender, we release that burden. We allow ourselves to breathe, to step lightly, and to walk with confidence on the path God lays before us. The doors that open in response to surrender are often filled with freedom. The freedom to grow, the freedom to explore, the freedom to embrace opportunities without fear of failure. In surrender, we discover that God's guidance is not restrictive, it is expansive. It enlarges our vision, stretches our capacity, and invites us into experiences that exceed the limitations we imposed upon ourselves. Surrender also cultivates discernment. As we release control and open ourselves to divine guidance, we learn to distinguish between what is truly aligned with God's purpose and what is merely a reflection of our own desires. We become attuned to the subtle signs, the quiet confirmations, the alignment of people, circumstances, and timing that indicate the doors we are meant to enter. This discernment is not instantaneous. It develops through practice, reflection, and the continual act of trusting God even when clarity is not immediately apparent. Each step of surrender strengthens our ability to recognize the pathways that lead to fulfillment and to avoid those that distract, deceive, or delay our destiny. Faith is the engine of surrender. Without faith, surrender is fear, it is hesitation, it is reluctance, it is doubt masquerading as trust. But with faith, surrender becomes a dynamic force, a powerful acknowledgement that God's plan is superior to our own, that His timing is perfect, and that the doors He opens are both purposeful and life-giving. Faith allows us to step boldly even when the path is obscured, knowing that we are guided, protected, and equipped to navigate the journey. The more we surrender, the more our faith grows, and the more we see the extraordinary ways in which God moves on our behalf. Surrendering your plans also brings humility. It teaches us that we are not the center of the universe, that our understanding is partial, and that life is not a solo performance but a symphony orchestrated by a divine conductor. It encourages us to relinquish ego, to recognize the interconnectedness of all things, and to honor the wisdom that surpasses our own. In humility, we find clarity, and in clarity, we find the courage to embrace doors that might initially seem daunting, unconventional, or even impossible. These doors, once entered with faith, often reveal blessings that far outweigh any comforts or security our own plans might have offered. Surrender requires trust in the unknown. Human nature craves certainty, but life guided by God often asks us to step into uncertainty with confidence. The doors that open in response to surrendered plans are not always visible from where we stand. They may be hidden, obscured, or even disguised as challenges. And yet the act of stepping through them, of following the nudges of divine guidance, transforms not only our circumstances, but our very selves. Each door opens to new experiences, new relationships, new insights, and new growth that could never have been accessed through the rigidity of self-directed planning. Surrender also inspires gratitude. As we let go of our own designs and witness the doors that God opens, we recognize the abundance that flows into our lives when we are aligned with divine purpose. We become aware that every blessing, every opportunity, and every encounter is part of a larger tapestry, woven with intention, care, and love. Gratitude deepens our connection with God, fortifies our faith, and reinforces the understanding that surrender is not loss, but gain, not limitation, but expansion, not surrendering control, but embracing empowerment through divine alignment. Through surrender, we learn that God's doors are not random. They are purposeful, intentional, and crafted to lead us exactly where we need to be. Each door is an invitation to growth, a test of faith, and a channel for blessings that surpass what we thought possible. When we release our plans, we begin to recognize that the universe is not a place of chance, but a place of divine design, and that the doors that open in response to surrender are perfectly timed, perfectly suited, and perfectly guided to bring about the transformation and fulfillment that our hearts long for. Surrendering your plans to God is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong practice. It is a daily choice to release control, to trust, to follow, and to remain open to the doors that appear. Each day, each decision, each moment of uncertainty offers the opportunity to surrender anew, to step through the doors of possibility, and to experience the abundant life that unfolds when human intention is aligned with divine will.